in the beginning of your, well, actually, at one point you were talking about the Samabon.
Yes.
So this is verified in the purport, Prabhupada's purport, of the very first verse of this chapter.
Okay.
I really like this part of the purport.
Okay, let's have a look.
So, he says that human life is meant for the cultivation of spiritual knowledge and eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the executive heads of all states and all planets are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture, and devotion. So this knowledge is very important and can be imparted in so many nice ways. Education, culture, and devotion. So there was one more point, which we have the person who does our Bhagavad Gita overview seems to always hammer home this point, that for the devotee, the prescribed duty is his sadhana. So that means he has to follow the instructions of the spiritual master, follow the 4 regulative principles, chant your 16 rounds, and do whatever other instructions that your spiritual master has made. And there's so many instructions, or at least ones that he's directing to you, whatever you can do. Prescribed duties doesn't just mean just because I was born in this family, or I have a tendency that I can only work on as a mechanic in cars, or I can only I can only be a doctor or whatever. Devotee can do anything, isn't it? So I had one more comment. In the verse it describes, Prabhupada describes in the purport how Grihastha life is a form of a license for sense gratification. But in many other places, Prabhupada says very directly and emphatically that Grihastha life is not a license for sense gratification.
Yeah, in his class he gives the example. He says, some people will tell you that Grihastha life is like legalized prostitution.
Yeah.
But he also explains in other places where Krishna says that later in the 10th chapter, I think, that he is a sex life that is not against religious principles. That actually and somewhere else I was reading, maybe this morning, I was reading Prabhupada's quotes about Manu Samhita because I wanted to know a bit more about it. Prabhupada was saying how the Grihastha can have sex only once a month. It's not that it's unrestricted license for sense gratification. And this is for the purpose of having Krishna conscious children. And if he's frustrated when his wife is pregnant, he cannot have sex, then he's allowed more than one wife so that he can still have sex once a month. And of course, in other places, Srila Prabhupada has given the example of Bhaktisaranta Saraswati, who said, of course, he was a Naishtaki brahmachari. He never married, he never engaged in sex life. But he made the statement that if he was going to produce Krishna conscious children, he would have 100 children. So this is the purpose.
I think he put it in the vein that if I thought I was qualified to produce Krishna conscious children, then I would have 100 children. He was very humble about the statement.
Yeah. So of course, as we take Srila Prabhupada's example, when he first started preaching, he didn't even tell his interested students that they had to give up drugs, let alone sex life. So In the beginning stages, when a person is a neophyte, we don't tell them that you're not in married life, you're not supposed to have sex. We tell them it's a license, because we have to encourage them to take up the process and become attached to it first, and then bring in the restrictions, because this positive engagement is so important. This development of a higher taste. If people don't stick around for long enough to develop a higher taste, then we're not really a preaching movement. So in the beginning, we don't tell people that it's not a license for sense gratification. Srila Prabhupada also explains this word ashrama means a spiritual institution. I think this class he was giving in New York. I read several classes, and he says, just as you walk along the street, you'll find so many churches and religious places. You know them to be places for spiritual understanding. He says, in the same way, this word ashram means a place for spiritual upliftment. So that's all ashramas. That's brahmachari ashram, grihastha ashram, vanaprastha ashram, and sannyas ashram. Are all situations for spiritual advancement when they perform correctly under the guidance of the spiritual master.
He also used the term that ashrams are a form of spiritual purification. That means all the way up to the sannyas ashram are for purification.
Yeah. And purification comes about by difficulties. The difficulties we face in each of the ashrams, what purifies us. So
there are lots of difficulties in each and every ashram. So don't think that if you give up one ashram, you're safe.
I know, Srila Prabhupada, and I was searching this Manu Samhita, so half of his quotes were about the murderer should be killed, and the other half were about the woman should always be protected. And he gives the example that the woman at an early age should be protected by the father. In the middle age, he gives the example of Devahuti. In the early age, she was protected by Manu, because she's Manu's daughter. In her married life, she was protected by Karma. And when Karma left home, she was protected by Kapila. So in that way, she was perfectly following Manu Samhita, which is good, because Manu was her father. But I mean, the situation is there that if one tries to avoid this, one actually puts oneself in a very uncomfortable position. Srila Prabhupada also gives that example, that if a woman tries to be independent, she actually ends up simply being in an awkward position, and an uncomfortable position, and an unhappy position. Prabhupada also, he permitted brahmacharini ashrams for those who were not married, some were not going to get married, but some were before getting married. But it is not an easier ashram than a grihastha ashram, because in a brahmacharini ashram, you surrender to the authority of the temple, which may change from time to time, and a situation that's nice one time may become very uncomfortable a little later. But in a grihastha ashram, once you settle yourself in your grihastha life, then you have some stability of you knowing where you are.
Yeah, then you can be uncomfortable for the rest of the time.
But at least you can develop some strategies for making it more comfortable as well. Yeah, every ashram is meant for purification, and so we have to view the troubles that come in that light. There's no easy way for purification. Instant surrender is good for elevated devotees like Gajendra, but it doesn't work for us when we're not so elevated. Any other comments or questions? I don't know. Oh. Okay. No, microphone.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you. I want to know about the Vanaprastha ashram.
Yes.
just want to know about it, because it mentions in what we read, the brahmachari, the grihastha, and sannyasi. So what about the vanaprastha ashram?
Yeah, so generally, according to, most of this prescription is given in the Manu Samhita, but generally one spends approximately 25 years as a brahmachari, approximately 25 years as a grihastha. So at the point when a grihasta's children are grown up, they're capable of taking up the business or going out and working and supporting the family, then the grihastas can take vanaprastha. So in different places, Srila Prabhupada explained sometimes the grihasta will go on pilgrimage by himself, and sometimes he will go on pilgrimage with his wife. But I think that depends on a family situation. If both of the grihastas are aspiring for spiritualization, then they may be going together. So at this vanaprastha life, one becomes dependent on one's grown-up children, who are then earning money and can support one. So one can dedicate one's time to becoming renounced. One can still live in a comfortable house, which is paid for by the children or by your savings, but one can increasingly go on pilgrimage and learn more about spiritual life. And then sannyas is an option for later on, but vanaprastha is a way of giving up householder life. Do you want to comment more on vanaprastha?
Thank you.
Vanaprastha is one of the ashrams that has not been experienced and studied very well in our society. And I've seen many of the men who have married off their daughters and are ready for taking vanaprastha and have taken vanaprastha. And it's very difficult for them to go through all the diplomacy it takes to get sannyas. So, and Prabhupada describes also that vanaprastha is, it's very acceptable for the wife and husband to travel around to the holy places. In fact, it seems like he recommends it.
Yeah, in some places he does.
Yeah.
In other places he seems to recommend separation.
Yeah. And then there's a certain kind of sannyas where the man actually lives just a little bit on the outskirts.
And the family
actually serves him and feeds him and makes sure that he's taken care of. I mean, there's 4 orders of sannyas.
There's 4 styles of sannyas, and it begins, that's the first one.
And not all the ashrams are advised to take sannyas. It's mainly the brahmanas and the kshatriyas are advised to take sannyas. The vaishyas and the sudras are not advised to take sannyas.
In some places he even says it should only be the brahmanas. And the kshatriyas can take vanaprastha and go to the forest. Not so much sannyas. And then the vaishyas have 2 ashrams. They can be brahmacharis and they can be grihastas. But the sudras should only be grihastas. So it's like that, not all of the ashrams available for all of the brahmanas. But of course, when we come to Krishna consciousness, and of course, the other thing Srila Prabhupada is mentioning, that in this age, we don't have organized varna ashram, so we can't be so clear in our distinctions. It's very difficult.
Like, for example, a person like yourself would actually be considered in the vanaprastha.
Yeah, I'm wearing white, but I never got married.
Right, but your situation is more or less like a vanaprastha.
Yeah.
You're not married, and you have no household attachments, and you're simply looking for the advancement of your spiritual life.
And I'm under the shelter of my spiritual master. I'm not without shelter.
No, So this is very important, not to be without shelter. Somehow you have to have some shelter.
Yeah.
If it's not your children, then you have to, in the temple, like Mother Aditya, she spent a good portion of her spiritual life in Bombay, and the Bombay management maintains her. That's more or less what they do. As far as the men go, I've seen a whole mixture of things that I think is simply not clear, and people haven't taken it seriously yet.
Yeah, I think in some classes Prabhupada has been trying to recommend that vanaprastha be taken, though he says that one should not wait for vanaprastha, but vanaprastha should also be for traveling and preaching in Krishna, in ISKCON. For devotees in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, the vanaprastha can also start to travel and preach, and thereby, Srila Prabhupada has made some comments also, but thereby he can relieve his spiritual master of some of his preaching duties, and the spiritual master can take more time for his own rahas bhajan. So this is also important for the disciples as they mature, is to take some of the responsibility for spreading Lord Chaitanya's movement, so that the spiritual master doesn't have to do everything by himself. Prabhu here has a comment.
Hare Krishna, Dhanavardhana.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Sometimes Prabhupada has written that those yogis which you are performing are marked, though yogis, though people are performing are for material persons. But spiritual, one who is unrelated to spiritual has not go for yogis, yagyas, yogis.
I'm sorry, Prabhu, I'm having a little difficulty in understanding what you are saying.
Hey, Prabhupada has written in many Bhagavatam that those who go for yogis, do you understand yogis? Yagyas, go to fire.
Okay, so, yeah.
These are for only material persons. And in 25th chapter he wrote that spiritual, those who are in Krishna consciousness has to perform these yogis.
So yagya is for everybody. Now, if you come to our overview classes on Friday and Saturday evenings, you'll find how actually this process here through these first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita is actually about our sadhana bhakti. So when you come to Krishna consciousness also, even there are literally fire yagyas. When you take initiation, there's a fire yagya. When you get married, there's a yagya. Like that. When you take sannyas, there is a yagya. So, the karmakanda form of yagya is an offering to the demigods. But even when it's properly done according to the Vedas, it is seen that yagya is Vishnu himself. The fire is actually Vishnu. You are offering for material benefits, but still the fire is Vishnu. But what is explained right back from this verse in 3.9 is that yagya is actually performed for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Yeah. Transcendence, Vishnu, is within the sacrifice, within the prescribed duties. So, and what was explained, I think it must have been H.G.Lavanga when he was speaking on this verse, text 24, that it's the consciousness of the performer that makes the difference between a material sacrifice and a transcendental sacrifice. So when the performer of the sacrifice is totally absorbed in Krishna consciousness, then everything, the offering, the fire, the process of sacrifice, the performer and the result becomes Krishna conscious. So it's that absorption in serving Krishna that makes the difference. It's not whether we do a sacrifice or whether we don't do a sacrifice. So it's Krishna is trying to explain to Arjuna all the way through the Bhagavad Gita, do your duty for my sake, as an offering for me. And that's the ultimate Krishna consciousness. It's not about not doing something. We have to act, but we have to act for Krishna's pleasure. Alright, Prabhu? Mataji has a comment.
According to Vedic culture, then when there is sannyasa, a sannyasi goes only to 3 places, Bhiksham Dehi, whatever he gets, then he takes it. And what is the duty of a sannyasi for all other people?
So, in this age of Kali, there are some Vedic processes that are prohibited because Kali is such a degraded age. And sannyas on those strict grounds is one of those things that's prohibited. So this sannyas ashram was brought in by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I think. He took sannyas in Vaishnava tradition. He brought it back in terms of for the purpose of spreading Krishna consciousness, for the purpose of preaching. So there's a reason why he took sannyas, because he wanted to distribute love of God indiscriminately to everybody. But he found that as a grihastha, some people were not respecting him. So therefore his decision to take sannyas, he's decided people, by their culture, they respect sannyasis. So therefore, if I take sannyas, even if a person doesn't know who I am, they will respect me, and then I can give them my blessings. So this was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's decision. So he took sannyas in order to spread Krishna consciousness. So this has been followed, particularly recently. A lot of our acharyas took Babaji initiation, but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati took sannyas, and he dressed in saffron, and he dressed his brahmacharis in saffron, for the purpose of gaining respect in order that we may be able to spread Krishna consciousness more successfully. So that's the purpose for all sections of societies. A sannyasi is meant to go door to door, not to beg. That is not the purpose of his door to door. His purpose of door to door, going door to door, is actually to bring Krishna consciousness into the household. So he goes there and gives his association, he can answer their questions, he can give some advice, like that. So that's the purpose of sannyas. It's not simply that he goes door to door to beg for his food. Yeah, like that.
That Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, to spread the Krishna consciousness.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai.